And I had to really go through this journey of letting go of who I thought I was and embracing who I am becoming. And the sort of strange thing that was sort of all throughout this process was that I was so certain about the
This is Scratch Your Own Itch, the one show that delivers the conversations that we're afraid to share, but need to. This show is all about creating a life worth living. I'm Logan Tyler Nelson, and I'm your host. So, you're going to hear conversations with creators and entrepreneurs talk about what they do, their current and past traumas, how they became who they are, and what they are truly curious about. This is the show where we talk about the things we think about a lot, but need to talk about more. Please take note that this show is not a substitute for actually creating a life worth living, because this show will stir your beliefs, make you question what it means to create a life worth living. So my promise to you is to always give you one question to answer for yourself today, to start turning your dreams into a reality. So, my curiosity question is, have you ever been guilty of letting the story of your mind take over the story that you have in your heart? Seriously, ask yourself this. Have you ever been guilty of letting the story in your mind take over the story that you have in your heart? And I have to be honest with you, because honestly, I have too, and I want to let you know you're not alone. Because I went to school to be an actor. I wanted to be Spider-Man, which is already pretty wishful thinking, right? But while I was going to acting school, I listened to a ton of podcasts and thought leaders, one podcast being the Inside the Acting podcast, which really got me into self-development and also scratching my own itch with what it would be like to be a Los Angeles actor while I was studying acting at NIU in DeKalb. This podcast taught me so much about myself and the business of acting, and today I have the immense amount of pleasure to be sitting down with one of the creators and this incredible podcaster himself. I don't like that name. I'm going to call it incredible interviewer, Trev Algatt. And Trev Algatt is somewhat in a transition of careers. And as you know, when you're in transition of a career, sometimes you lose your identity. You don't know who you are. Especially when we're constantly trying to label ourselves as something such as actor, writer, director, entrepreneur, marketer, lawyer, or the whole gamble of other categories could identify ourselves with. But if I was going to give you a bio on Trev, I would say this. Trev was/is an actor and year-round competitive swimmer with the SYOI in Los Angeles. Not to mention, he was a 6-year veteran corps member of the critically acclaimed Los Angeles Theater Ensemble. Trevor is also a curator, co-producer, and co-host of the free weekly podcast Inside Acting, which features unbiased, in-depth interviews and industry professionals of all different callings. So, without further ado, I'd love for you to meet the one and only Trev Algatt. Hey, Trev, thank you so much for coming on Scratch Your Own Itch.
Hey, Logan, thank you for having me, man. What an intro. That was pretty cool.
Dude, I think I get it from you guys, and I've listened to your guys' podcast longer than I've probably listened to any other podcast, and I even find myself saying stuff that you guys say, I love it, man, I love it.
Rock on, man. Cool. Thank you.
Oh no, thank you, man. The mission of the show is really to make someone feel less alone, but also scratching your own itch, which in my definition is solving a problem that you have, in the only way you know how. And we could talk about your story, I guarantee, for hours. But firstly, I'd just like to kind of start off with, what are you curious about? Like, what is that one question that you're trying to constantly answer for yourself?
Oh wow. So we're starting with the light, small stuff, huh? What is the one question that I'm trying to answer for myself? Uh, man, at this phase of my life, it's just how to create, and this might sound a little cheesy, but how to create more love in the world and how to just live a happy, fulfilled life. Like that's really, it's down to the most basic stuff for me right now. So yeah,
Well,
that's it, man. I don't really know. I'm still figuring out what that looks like because I thought it looked one way when I was younger, and now I'm realizing it doesn't look that way. So I'm like, all right, what does it look like? And that's sort of the path I'm on.
let's give a little context to that. When you say that you thought it was one way and now it's not, what was that change that you had to make? That big change that, you identified yourself in one category and now you kind of have to tell yourself a new story to feel like you mean something in the world, right?
Yeah, yeah. As you sort of mentioned in the intro, I moved to LA to pursue a career in acting, and I was pretty convinced from a young age that this was my calling. This was my ticket in life. This was what I was going to be doing with the rest of my life, and this was going to be my life's work. So I moved out to LA, and I had a decent amount of experience in the East Coast doing live theater, and I had pretty high hopes for how it was going to go. And I've had some successes in LA, and I've had some things that I'd rather not talk about or hope nobody ever sees. It's been 15 years, but at some point, right around when I turned 30, I just started to feel this sense of, I don't know, priorities were changing. I was becoming a different person. And I had to really go through this journey of letting go of who I thought I was and embracing who I am becoming. And the sort of strange thing that was sort of all throughout this process was that I was so certain about the false version of me, and the true version of me feels way more amorphous. So concretely, I thought I was an actor. I thought I was out here to be a film and television actor and stage actor as well. And I've shifted around through a bunch of different versions of that. But what I'm learning is that I just want to be a creative being who's making work that means something in the world, and that may look like acting, and it may look like I don't know, going all Daniel Day Lewis and being a cobbler in Italy. I really can't tell right now. I'm just sort of turning over stones and searching for what resonates. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah. So I want to get a little bit deeper into it because I identify with it, um, uh, so much. When I got done with acting school, I thought that was the thing that I needed to do. Like that was it, right? And especially as actors, it's really scary to actually not let yourself down, but let other people that you feel like you're letting down. Like actually saying to someone, "Hey, I no longer want to be an actor," when they could point to you and say, "Hey, Trev, oh, how's the acting going?" And just knowing that you have to now answer back and saying, I'm not really going down that route anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It was really, I think, I think you could agree with me. It's really hard to say no. I'm not doing that thing anymore. Actually, and this is especially when you poured your heart and soul and you obsessed it with it at one point. And I know that you're like me. You really get into things, and your level of commitment is at a 10 when you get into it. And so to to diverge and not do it anymore, you do lose yourself. You look in the mirror and you don't know who you are anymore. And uh, I'm kind of going through that transition a little bit right now. Like this podcast for me has helped me a lot, but um, just not identifying myself as this actor or as this person that wants to be on a TV show is really hard. So could you
Mm.
go into that as sort of like being able to let yourself just let other people down? Do you know what I mean?
Like sort of like as far as their expectations go.
Yeah. So like you probably have a group of friends or a community from inside the acting podcast. I guarantee it. Where when they ask you like, "Hey, Trev, I've got this thing for you," and to say no to it is like it's like saying no to who you are or who you were
Mm.
at least at one point.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if a role came along today that was great, and somebody said, "Here, you don't even have to audition for this. Just I'd love to play you to play this role." I mean, I would absolutely do it. But what I found, or what I was really afraid of, I should say, when I first started to acknowledge this truth, was that a lot of my friends would sort of, behind my back, sort of shake their head and uh, you know, sort of go like, oh well, I kind of knew he'd never amount to anything, and I knew he didn't have what it took, and well, now we need to sort of move him out of our friend circle because we don't have anything in common anymore. That was my fear. What I've found is that people are way kinder and bigger hearted and smarter than that, and every one of my friends and family members has been a rock of support, and they've been like, Trev, I just want you to be happy, man. Like I don't care what you do. I just want you to enjoy it. And like whatever that takes is is what we're going to support you in. So that's been my experience, and that's been really nice because letting go of this sort of old identity, was like there was nothing to fill it. I didn't know what I was going to be instead, and so I just had to be gentle with myself. Be like, all right, you said this earlier. It's not about labels. It's not about trying to fit into a role that the rest of the world can point at me and define me as. I think that's what humans do with each other, but I think that's ultimately sort of a damaging way to live your life in terms of like, oh, I'm branding myself as such and such, and I must cater to my brand at all costs. People are way more complex than that, and I'm very fortunate and blessed to have friends and family that get that we're all complex people and we're all trying to figure it out because nobody really knows anything. And that's sort of where that all sits for me right now.
Wow. Oh, wow. I really love that that came up for you. That whole the story inside your head ended up being completely untrue. Like it like that sort of like people are gonna point at you and say, "Oh gosh, like we can't be friends anymore." Like, and I know that happened to
Mm,
me too. So people are amazing, and I think I underestimate them a lot, and I
mm,
don't mean to, and that's a huge confession. Like,
mm.
so I'd like to ask you, sort of, I guess it's a sort of a givings question, which is, what's that one thought that you keep having during the day that you just wish you didn't have anymore?
Wow, these are great questions, man. Uh, how do I be happy? I think is a thought that comes up a lot. I'm always looking for the next step rather than evaluating the gift of the moment. And that's a real practice just to remind myself in the here and now that I have my health, I have money in the bank, I have food in the fridge, I have a roof over my head, I have people that love me. Like all the boxes are checked. And yet I'm constantly looking forward to some non-existent future moment and going, where's my happiness going to come from? It's like, is there anything more insane? Is there anything more insane than that? So that's a thought that comes up often, and I think it's tied more to the sort of path that I'm on, where I'm searching for my next mission, as it were. I feel a little missionless, but I think tying happiness to a mission is a bit of a fool's errand. I don't know. I'm still in process with that, but that's kind of my thinking right now.
So how often can I ask you this question? Because I feel like you keep telling, hey, I'm in process, I'm in process. When the process that you're in right now is like we can't just stop life. What is that one thing that you think is still allowing yourself to be Trev Algatt, even though he's not going out for acting roles? But there's got to be something that you're doing during the day that really fulfills you, that makes you go, yeah, I could do this thing for forever. What is that thing?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I was years ago. I was in therapy, and it was a tough time in my life. I was going through a gnarly breakup, and a family member had been diagnosed with terminal cancer. And my therapist said, "What are your anchors? Like, you've got to have things in your life that anchor you. What are those things?" And it was the first time I had thought about that. I didn't realize that, there were things that I enjoyed doing every day that made up, you add these things up and they become the person, which is in my case, Trevor Algatt in this moment in time. And swimming is a big one. I swim with the masters team out here, and that's it's a wonderful sort of challenge and rejuvenating, restorative thing. I'm really getting more and more into cooking, especially vegan, like raw vegan food stuff is really gratifying. And music is something that I've always sort of pushed off to the sidelines to make way for acting. I've always thought I can't do music. I can't, really indulge this because it would take away time from the acting. And I think that was a toxic situation that I was creating for myself. So those three things really are huge for me. The swimming, and by extension, fitness, vegan food, which I just am really, really obsessed with eating these days. Maybe I'm eating my emotions, maybe not. I'm not sure. And then music, man. Yeah, those are my three sort of rocks right now.
Oh man, I love that you're like you just admitted that, because I'm so addicted to food too, and
It's the American way.
it is, man. And it's like I actually I follow Mind Pump, which I'm a huge fan of those guys. And Sal DiStefano, one of the hosts, says, he puts out a quote, I eat food because I love my body and I work out because I love my body. And that is like so hard to go towards. It's like, because I eat food because I want to nourish it. Yeah, I do love my body, of course. But let's face it, just feels so good. And some endorphins are let off when you're eating this food. And then also, I work out sometimes because I feel like, I need to work off that food that I ate. So, I kind of switched over to, I know you're a very very, very familiar with the eat stop eat guy, which I only eat like
Yeah.
once or twice a day. And I listened to your guys' interview the other day. So that really
Mhm.
like was like, oh, this is like, I just need to hang out with Trev and AJ more, but now they're splitting up. And I kind of want to go into that though. Which I know you probably want to talk about food, but I really want
Always.
I I want to say the direction of the show, and the mission of the show is to make someone, feel less alone. And so one of the things that I think is really hard to talk about is this sort of like huge transition someone has to go through, which give the context of inside the acting, and then also this breakup that may be occurring with it. And what's the next step? And if you don't know, that's fine too, but do your best.
Sure. So I started inside acting, oh gosh, like 9, 10 years ago, because I wanted to have a good excuse to reach out to the people that I wanted to talk to. Like, I worked at Apple at the time, and all these celebrities would come into the store. Like Elijah Wood would come in, and Gail Garcia Bernal would come in, and Wesley Snipes would come in. None of these people have been on the podcast, but I felt this like need to, like, I wanted to have a reason for them to say yes to me. Otherwise, I was just like some other random fanboy. So I started the podcast to sort of build that reason into my life, so that I would be of value not only to those people that I was making requests of, but also to the community. And it was great. I learned so much. It started out being a podcast about the sort of nuts and bolts of how do you build a career in the industry. Headshots, audition techniques, classes, survival jobs, all these things that we sort of want to get in order to sort of continue, through the years with our acting careers. So it was very much focused on the mechanics of it. And then over the years, we started to really realize that the mechanics are more a symptom of the inner game, like what is going on inside of you as a human being, such that you continue to have success in this career. And honestly, I define success in this career as just still being here, still playing the game. And so it became really more about like the inner game of who do I need to develop myself into in order to enjoy this journey through the ups and downs. And it's been really, really enlightening. I can't even begin to imagine what my life would look like without the podcast, without the people I've met, without the wisdom that I've gleaned from these incredible people we've had the opportunity to talk to. But at a certain point, it started to feel not like me anymore. It was around the same time that I started to have this inner, conversation with myself about, do I still, does acting still light my fire? And once I got honest and was like, I don't think it does, which was, as we've talked about, a tough realization to come to. I had to start to look at, how I was spending my time, where I was spending my time, what really did my ideal, planet Earth look like, and what did my ideal existence on that planet look like? And so, through many, many sort of false alarms and stops and starts, I finally sat down with AJ and said, man, I really think I need to move on from this. This doesn't feel like the authentic Trevor anymore. This feels like a mask that I put on to do the podcast. And that's not to say I didn't enjoy it and I didn't feel like I was in contribution, but it didn't feel like me anymore. It felt like an old version of me that I was stepping into just to do this thing. And that wasn't the right reason to continue doing it. I finally, told AJ, I got to step away from this. And we're not, like splitting up necessarily. Like we're still close friends. But he may or may not continue with the podcast as of this recording. I don't know that he's committed one way or the other. Um, but uh, but that's sort of the journey. And as far as for what's next for me after that, I don't know that I'm done with podcasting. I have a few ideas I've been kicking around. I'm not quite ready to air yet, but that's the journey of that and the vacuum that is left by this huge presence in my life that is inside acting. The vacuum that is sort of opening up is a little scary because now I have to step up to the plate and fill it with something, but I get to design what that something is. So I get to very intentionally choose what is going to give me energy, what is going to be in service to the world, what is going to help me evolve and graduate to the next level so that I can be, in the highest contribution possible. Uh, so that's, yeah, man, I'm just rambling, but
No, no, no. I
was
love
that
it. No,
it?
you're not rambling because I gotta ask you this because I know that you're someone that loves self-development as I do. And I think I loved it because it allowed me to finally have a structure to the craziness that acting often calls upon. Like, I mean, it is a hard occupation because if you're not systematic with your day, if you're not the sort of if anyone ever heard of GTD, get things done, and if you're not with the Gary Vaynerchuk way of thinking where you got to grind it out, and it's true, it is a grind, and to now not have that grind anymore is a really it's hard to have like moments of just kind of doing nothing and slowing down and stopping. So I want to ask you is there now this new sort of like bliss that comes with any sort of relationship that you find yourself in right now? Maybe there's a new person that came into your life where you go, wow, I actually don't need to just be so sufficient with my time. I can slow down and I don't need to like rush anymore. I can, and maybe this happened a while ago, or maybe it's happening now where like, because acting's not this rat race that you're in anymore, you can kind of slow down and just be. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Like, there's no grind anymore, and so it's like, what do you sort of fill that with? And I think it's a confluence of things. I think removing that, quote unquote grind from my life has coincided with just getting older. And the older I get, the less concerned I am with like hustling, the more I just want to enjoy life. Like I was very, I think, ego driven. Not like I was super arrogant or anything, but I was driven by like the idea of success and respect and having a platform and all these things when I was younger. I was very much like, that those were my reasons for the hustle and the grind. That was my motivation. That was what sort of kept me going. Was I wanted to make something of myself. And the older I get, the more I'm like, I think I'm pretty cool, man. As long as I've got like love in my life and you know, uh, like I said earlier, food in the fridge, money in the bag, roof over my head. I've got family and I'm doing work that means something that makes a difference. I'm cool with that. I am just one of 7+ billion people on this planet, and I just want to do good. I just want to leave this planet a little better. I'm here for a blink of an eye. I don't need to be a super famous actor. I just want to make a difference in the world and experience as much and give as much love as possible so that when I'm gone, it's a little bit better than it was before I existed, and then who knows what's after that.
Hey, Logan Tyler Nelson here. I would so appreciate it if you took some time to hit the subscribe button. I really want to just honestly live and give. Why? Because I was told when I was young that if you're feeling down, the best way to feel better is by lifting someone up again. So, in an effort to make someone feel less alone, please hit the subscribe button so the podcast has a better chance of being found and making someone feel less alone. And if you're feeling down, hey, it can help you. Know that by hitting that subscribe button, you just did someone a huge favor. So thank you for hitting that subscribe button. Yeah. Oh man. So I gotta kind of pivot a little bit, and I think go into what I call scratching the surface curiosity questions, all for just making someone feel less alone, and also just to learn a little bit more about you. And some of these are questions that I think are going to be fun, and then some are going to be not so fun. um,
Okay.
so if you're ready for it, man, we'll get into it. Okay.
Yeah, bring it on.
All right. All right. The first question is, if you could sit down anyone right now, in front of you and interview them and ask them just one question, who would it be, and what question would that be?
Oh man. Um, I think at this moment I would have to sit down with a guy named Daniel Quinn. He's an author whose books changed my life, and he just passed away, unfortunately, about 3 weeks ago, as of this recording. But he wrote a book called Ishmael that was just a game changer for me, and I would want to sit down with him and ask him, now that he's on the other side of this grand experiment that is the human civilization. I would ask him what uh, what do you see next for us as a human, as humans, as a species.
Oh, that's a deep, man. That is. I've never heard of this guy, and I'm super excited to scratch my own itch with him.
Oh, he's
That's
great. Yeah,
definitely.
his books are his thinking and his books. I mean, he's not totally wholly original. There's a few writers and authors and thinkers out there that are all in the same vein as him, but he was the first one I was exposed to, and I think of all the ones I've read, he's the one who most succinctly communicates some ideas about, again, the human experiment that have completely changed the way I see the world. Yeah, he's
Wow,
great.
that's
Yeah.
awesome. That's so cool. So I would like to go into asking you, if I had a master podcaster, I'd be really screwing up if I didn't ask this question. Because you've had over 300 episodes with such variety of people. What do you think what's that one quality that it takes for someone to be not just good, not just great, but a masterful interviewer like yourself?
Uh, well, thank you for that. Masterful interviewer. I'll have to add that to my resume. I love that. I'm glad that's your experience.
Please do. No,
Uh,
seriously, you guys go in very well. I mean, like you're like a Joe Rogan where you can almost interview anyone, and I love that about the show. And wherever you go with your own life, man, I just want to say, like, and acknowledge you for that. That's one of the things I really look up to. As
Thank you.
it's amazing. It's an art, man, and you do it very well.
Thank you very much. That means a lot. That really does. That I got a nice warm fuzzy feeling in my heart right now. The one skill I would say, this is sort of a personal mantra for me, is cultivate curiosity. Um, I think it's human nature to be very self-interested, and continuously, as I'm doing right now, turn the conversation towards yourself. We love talking about ourselves, right? We are the most fascinating people in the world to ourselves, and the ego loves it, man. The ego just laps it up when we get to talk about ourselves and we have a captive audience. Like, you're a wonderful listener. I can't believe this is going so well. It's like I don't feel rushed. I don't feel pressured. I feel safe. I feel at ease, sitting here talking with you right now. So I would say cultivate curiosity, because if you can learn to really listen to what people are saying and then ask additional questions that encourage them to increasingly clarify their answers and go deeper with it, then not only are you creating just a wonderful experience for them, but you're also creating a real sense of peace in the world. Did not that's a really big statement to make, but I think the world needs more listening. The world needs more people being curious about things that don't immediately impact their hedonism, so to speak.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, 100%. Two things I gotta say is being compassionate, being curious, and being creative are my cornerstones. For when I go, okay, if I'm exhausted right now during the day, and I check in and ask myself if I'm not doing one of those three things, that's usually the reason why I'm exhausted. And then the next thing is what you just talked about is creating peace and a level of there's just not enough listening shows, and there's too many talk shows, I think, out there, which listening is
Yeah.
such an art. And um that's why I think I love podcasts so much, is because when you get to just sit down or go through about your day, and just 2 hours or 3 hours of being in someone's ear, there's a it's beautiful, absolutely amazing. So
Mm.
the next thing I'd love to ask you is what's your own definition of success? Because I know that in the acting world is like that question is thrown around so much. But what is Trev Algatt's definition of success? And he may have said it already, but
No, totally. I love this question. My textbook definition for success, and I stole this from somebody, I don't know, or can't remember who it was, but my textbook definition is success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. So essentially, you taking steps towards something that you consider worth chasing, worth realizing, worth manifesting. Uh, what that looks like, I think, in practice is just waking up and being excited about your life and feeling satisfied that you're checking all the boxes when it comes to what creates a well-rounded life. That definition, I should say, just to sort of harp on what I've been saying this entire half hour, is has changed for me. When I was younger, it was very much solo driven, very much, success for me is feeling good about taking, meaningful steps and making meaningful progress towards a career as an actor. Now, success is like, do I have people in my life that I feel you can tell the theme here, right? The recurring theme that I feel the love from, and that I love back. And is the work that I'm doing today? Did I do one thing today that made the world a kinder, gentler, more just, more exciting place to be? Um, I think that's my definition of success right now, but it still harkens back to that textbook definition, which is again the progressive realization of a worthy ideal.
I love that answer. I really do.
I feel like
I
I'm
was
being really heady today. I hope this is landing. I can't tell where if I'm being too extreme here.
No. Oh, you're doing. That's so funny that you say that because I'm like, I'm writing down a bunch of notes like right now, like, oh, this is great, this is great. And I think it's still, if you say you're being heady, that really intrigues me. Because right now I feel like you're being very hearty, which is exactly
Mm,
what I think I wrote my first draft of a book about, is this sort of two consciousness, the one consciousness sort of saying like, I feel like I'm too heady right now. I feel like I'm not doing this job well right now or accurately. But a feeling is, as you may discover, Trev, is only a feeling. It's not the truth always. So I am, being heady is much different than saying I feel like I'm being heady.
mm,
So
mm.
I'll let you. You know what? These are scratching the surface curiosity questions that I was supposed to ramble through. But I want you to comment on that. I'd like for you to comment on that. What do you think about that?
About being sort of head centric versus heart centric.
About the illusion that your game will sometimes, and the game is inside your head, that game of going, wow, I feel this one way, but the truth is that it's just a feeling. It's not the truth. Because feelings can play
Mm,
tricks on us, as you know, as an actor. uh like you may make this reality totally imaginary, but to you it feels so
mm.
real.
Yeah, yeah, that speaks to my meditation practice actually. I've been meditating almost every day now for like the past 3, 4 years. And I didn't get what meditation was all about. I honestly I began because I heard it was good for you, and that was sort of my all I knew about it. But the more I've done it, the more I've started to key in as to what it's really about. And it took about 2 years for me to really click in with like, this is what meditation is. Meditation is about coming back to the present moment and just noticing the drama in your head, just watching these little, storms happen and realizing that they are not you. You are not your thoughts. You can choose your thoughts. And the present moment is often very different from the false reality we spin up in our heads. And so, yeah, hearing you speak into that, it sounds like you got there a lot, a lot more quickly and efficiently than I did, because it took me a while to really see that. But I do make a point to practice that every day when I catch myself, and I'm getting better with it. The more you practice, it's like a muscle. The more you practice, the better you get at catching yourself. But when I catch myself in these days, in these conversations of going down the rabbit hole of blaming someone or judging someone, sometimes that person is myself. Often that person is myself, catching myself and just going, wow, that's an interesting sort of take on reality. But like, what's actually true right now? Okay, feet are in my shoes. I've got breath in my lungs. Like none of this stuff in my head need to be true. What's really true? So I think that's for me. That's like what the practice of moving out of your head and into your heart kind of looks like. Is just it starts in your head, ironically, but it's acknowledging that everything actually originates in the heart. Does that make
No,
sense?
100%. And um it's funny, like, even though I'm not in the acting world or anything anymore, but still quotes from it do come up. One of my favorite quotes was said by Stella Adler, and she said, I'm not teaching actors how to be actors. I'm just teaching people how to be people again, because we as actors, once we go, I want to be a great actor, we literally try to make ourselves have these emotions that are just, they're not supposed to be generated like robots. And I would
Yeah.
love to hear you either comment on that quote, or what is a quote or a mantra lately that's been like really, really just taking a hold of your day or your week or your month.
Mm. Well, I want to speak into a quote. I have to really think about that, but I did have a moment years ago, right around when I started to sort of have this conversation about me as an actor. I was starting to disentangle my identity as an actor to like, who is the real Trevor? I had a moment where I was on stage doing this play that was uh, I'll just say it was poorly directed. I was not a fan of the director and the production itself. We didn't really have any audience. Like I think a few nights we had like 4 people in the audience, and I was on stage at one point, and one of the dudes like right near the front turned to his girlfriend halfway through one of my scenes, and he just whispered, "What time is it?" And I was like, the whole theater could hear it, and I was
Oh,
like, "Oh, this is brutal." But I was having a tough time, having committed to this thing and just not being proud of it, not enjoying the process, and also just noticing that I was just doing a lot of acting. It was just a lot of Trevor acting. It was very presentational. I was emoting. I was, my blocking was on point. It was just acting, and it just felt. I had this moment where I was like, "This is gross. Like, what are you doing? This is really like just total like public masturbation." And I just thought to myself, like, what if tomorrow night that moment that I just did on stage, what if tomorrow night, instead of, being frustrated or sad or laughing or doing whatever the script calls for, what if I just threw that shit out the window and just went with whatever my gut told me to do? What if instead of crying when somebody said your mother's dead, instead of crying, what if I just said instead I wanted to do a jig? What if I wanted to dance or laugh or walk off stage, leave the scene, and then come back? I mean, I don't know. I mean, anything at all. Like, I think we so often don't honor those impulses because we're so caught up in what's, quote unquote, appropriate, which is this just a whole, like, that's just an exaggerated version of people pleasing. And so I had this moment where I was like, I don't want to be fake anymore in my work. I want to just let my inner self just sort of happen, and screw what is appropriate. And of course, you have to, do all of this with respect to the story arc and the other actors on stage and the director and things like that. So I'm not saying like to just go completely rogue if you're an actor and you're listening to this, but to really get in touch with what those impulses are and just go, you know what? That's normal because I'm a human being and that's my impulse. And it should be that simple, and it should be that acceptable. And I think that the best actors follow those impulses because that's human life. That's real. That's not predictable. We are weird, unpredictable beings. And so the more you can sort of let that happen and just take off that sheet that society has us wear that says, now do things the right way. If you can just remove that and just go like, no, I'm an animal underneath all this stuff. And this is what I'm feeling right now. I think that life can be a lot more textured and interesting if we can honor that. So I don't know that I have a quote necessarily, but that was something that was a bit of a turning point for me, and I still think about that and try and live that today. 10 years later. Oh, not 6 years later, 7 years later. Yeah.
hey friends. So let me ask you real quick. Are you someone who's trying to get more visibility? Who's trying to be in front of the crowd? Well, if that's you, I want to let you know that first of all, you're not alone. Second of all, if you want to get on more podcasts, or ones that actually scratch your own itch, meaning maybe you have a book, or a business, or maybe you do speaking, or if you don't yet do speaking, maybe you can, and maybe you'd love to. Well, I put something together for you, and in this little giveaway, I'm going to show you how to pitch yourself or podcasts and how to actually be professional when you show up so you can be the next authority in your niche, so you can start scratching your own itch. I know what it's like to build something, create something, and then there just be crickets. No one wants that. You need to be seen. You need to be heard because you have a message to share, a message that is worthy of hearing. Podcasts nowadays, more than ever, are being consumed by people. And guess who's actually learning the knowledge that's being shared? It's podcast listeners. It gives you a license to be an authority in whatever area you really dream of being an authority in. So if this at all starts to give you a little itch to scratch, just email Logan@LoganTylerNelson.com. Again, that's Logan@LoganTylerNelson.com. Wow, that's amazing. I love that. I love that. It's so true. The impulse is one thing that is something that is constantly being practiced. At the same time, you gotta stifle it out sometimes. And I'd love to talk about that for another 14 years. And I know I could. I know I could with you. But we gotta. Unfortunately, I want to kind of keep this a little bit shorter, just so people are not taking their entire day to listen to an episode.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I want
Yeah.
to just do two more questions. Is how can anybody that's listening to this right now, Trev, support you in your new endeavors or your current endeavors? Like just anything. How can that person support you? How can we support you? How can I support you?
Wow, what a question. You're an awesome interviewer, man. These questions are deep and well thought. Like this is like you're like wow,
uh,
this is my jam right here. Man, I would say for me specifically, I would go back to the cultivate curiosity thing. I don't think we have enough curious people in the world. Again, I don't want to sound like a grumpy old man, but as I'm getting older, I do kind of, I find more, I see myself, or I should say, I catch myself, um, um, going down that hole of like, wow, man, people just don't care. The world's going to shit and all this. Like, I don't want to be that guy, but it's tough sometimes to look around and see everybody in their cell phones. Every single face I see is looking down into a glowing screen. And I guess you could say, well, they're curious. They're on the internet or they're talking to their friends or whatever. But it's like there's a whole world happening outside of that. And there are people that are existing on this planet walking around with you. And I feel like if we could just learn to tune in to the human experience, and you know what, I'm going to go even further than that, not just the human experience, the life experience, because we're just one species on this planet. I really don't think nature could care less whether or not humans survive. We're just another experiment, if you ask me. I know that there may be some people who were raised in a certain belief system or faith that would dispute this, but this is sort of my take on it, where I'm at right now. We're just one experiment in millions and billions of experiments that Mother Nature has done, and we need to sort of take that into consideration. We have this consciousness, we have this ability to manipulate the world and to tell stories, and I think we need to take that seriously if we want to be good stewards of the planet that supports us. And so, beyond just the human experience, just the life experience, have curiosity about life, about the way things work, about other animals and plants and trees and oceans and the sky and the galaxy. I mean, there's so much out there, and it would really support me if people were more curious about that. Oh man. Yeah, that would be it. That would be the one thing. Cultivate more curiosity, please. You
yeah.
can tell what my worldview is
I no man, it is so cool for you to say that because I know for a fact as adults, once you grow up, your curiosity is it's stifled a little bit, and that is also
right now.
another way of stifling your play. And when you
Yeah.
stifle play, and it's all about the work, and it's all about even that word work to me is like, oh, you could substitute it with play, and people look at you like you're crazy at first when you do that. It's sort of like, hey, I get to do this thing. I get to do this work that you say
Mm,
and say I get to
yeah.
play. And I mean, I'm not the first to say this, so I can't pretend, but it was because of you, Trev, that allowed me to just follow intuition and follow my heart and follow, even though there's one story inside my mind that seems so true, to just follow the heart and not set up plans anymore, but just to do things because there's no how to book anymore. There's just not.
Mm,
So,
yeah.
But hey, Trev, I
Yeah.
want to invite you back on in like a month, no joke, a month, and just see where you're at. Because I want to, even though this is a show where interview creatives and entrepreneurs and uh, owners of small businesses. It's really also just like I said. The thing is to see the transformation that people have through going through hard things. And right now, I think you're going through a hard thing, which is to really find that new itch to sort of scratch that you can devote yourself to for a while. Who knows how long, but really get into it because I know you do. Um,
Yeah.
uh, so
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I do. I'd be honored to come back, and you've said a few things in this interview where I'm like, "Ooh, tell me more about that." So I'd love for it to be a little less one-sided next time too. I'm doing a lot of talking here, and I've heard my voice enough. I want to hear more about some of the things that are going on with you.
Oh, thank you so much. I hate talking about myself, but um, um, yeah. So we'll definitely talk about that soon
Yeah,
on
we'll make
a
it happen, man.
For sure. For now,
Yeah.
anybody that's listening right now, thank you so much for supporting the show. And if you heard anything that I said or Trev said that resonates with you, please don't be that person that just hits the next episode and allows yourself not to become friends with myself or Trev and reach out and tweet about it, Facebook about it, Instagram about it, and just get that conversation going. And like Trev was saying, you don't need to be on your phone all day to do this and stare at your screen. Heck, if you messaged me, DM'd me, and asked me for just a phone call for a little bit, I would love to talk to you. And I know Trev would too. I'm kind of going on a limb. I'm hoping Trev would too, but I have a feeling you would.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Awesome, Trev. Trev, also, where can people reach you then if they want to find you and just have that conversation?
Sure. I mean, I'm all over social medias. I don't use social media a lot these days. I don't find it. Uh, it's not really fitting in with my sort of vibe right now. But I'm on social media. It's just my name, Trevor Algatt, TrevorAlgatt. And who knows? By the time you hear this, maybe I'll be back on social media more actively. But yeah, that's social media, and then my website is just trevoralgatt.net.
I love it. I love it. I'll put that in the show notes. And I'll also make it super simple for you to make it clickable. So you just have to click on that link and be brought right to his page. So thank you again so much, Trev, man, for joining me today. This has just been one epic, awesome conversation.
Oh, dude, Logan, thank you. This has been awesome. Thank you.
All right, there's another episode of Scratch Your Own Itch. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to support the show by listening. The biggest compliment you could ever pay me is just by sharing this, because honestly, it doesn't take much, and it feels so good when people create something and take time. And when I see someone take time to create something that really just changed my day, either made me feel less alone, maybe put a smile on my face, made me laugh, made me feel wiser, I always want to share it with the world. Because why? When I share something that resonates with me, why not share it? I mean, that's just kind of the thing that goes around, and it's free. It takes no time at all other than just a click of the button, share, on either Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. Any of those social media platforms would be great to share this. So I really appreciate it. And I want to say that anybody who's looking to gain authority or expertise in their area, and they don't want to take another year or year and a half to write a book and wait until that's published, I think the best way is right now is to start a podcast. So if you're at all interested in starting a podcast, if you meet the certain requirements, I would love to help you with a podcast and also get a website going for you as well. And this is not an easy task. It's hard to actually get it done and get it out there. So every now and then we need some help, and I'm here for you. So please reach me at logan@logantellernelson.com if you're interested at all. And don't ever forget, you matter and you're enough.